Today we will be talking about zero to hero with site reliability engineering. And today my name is Chandu Disanayake, and I am an intern software engineer at Pearson Lanka. And I am also a third year undergraduate at SLIIT, specializing in software engineering. So let's get right into it. So this is the overview of what we will be talking about today. So we will be talking about why there is a need for SRE, what is SRE, the definition, system reliability, importance. Then we'll go to SRE in practice, SLAs, error budget, and then the tasks and responsibilities, as well as the common topic, SRE versus DevOps. So why is there a need for SRE? So in a traditional dev and operations, in traditional dev and ops roles, or in a company, there are two different types, the developers and the operations. So what usually happens in the developers' point of view is that developers would they would code the application and they would try to commit and implement new features fast as possible. Whereas in the operations team, they would want to maintain the stability of the entire code repository as well as the project. So as we can see, there is a conflict of interest between the two parties. What happens with SRE? They try to mend both the developers and operations together, and they communicate between both the parties to make things more smoother and simpler. So when we take a DevOps or a DevOps engineer, DevOps engineers try to go more forward to faster developer processes by setting up efficient development pipelines, or they would also strive for more they would strive for optimization for more speed rather than stability and reliability. So DevOps engineers, they only their role is to make sure that everything is as fast as possible. So as you can see, there is no dedicated role which focuses on the system's reliability. So this is where SRE comes into place. So we will check the definition of SRE. So SRE was conceptualized by Google Ben Trainer, who was also a software engineer, and was given a task to run a small team of other software engineering team to do operations work. So he defined the definition as SRE is what happens when you treat operations as a software development as a software problem and stuff it with a bunch of software engineers. So if we take a more professional definition, we would gather all the information and make this definition. So SRE teams are made up of software engineers who build and implement software to improve the reliability of the system or services using DevOps practices. So that would be my definition of SRE. So to understand the system reliability, we need to know what a system is. So a system can be a servers, databases, networks, cloud, or virtualization, application and services, or the whole. So that's the whole entire development environment. So what exactly is reliability? So if we take an example, let's assume that we need to pay something through our online banking service. And what if our online banking service provider is down? We will not be able to use their service, and hence we would not be able to pay whatever we need to pay. And hence that is an unreliable service. Whereas, as you can see in the top tech companies such as Google, YouTube, Twitter, those are companies where we rarely see their services being inaccessible. So those are reliable services. So users don't really notice reliability until something goes wrong. And that is the problem. And due to the lack of reliability, it causes unhappy customers and loss of revenue. So what makes the system unreliable? So when there are changes in the infrastructure, there can be unreliabilities or dependencies which break the code. And there can be changes in the platform, for example, Kubernetes clusters, and changes in the services and applications. So all these changes can cause a system to be unreliable. All these, if you go back, and all these changes are happening due from the developers as well as the operations team as well. How to make systems reliable? So as you can see in this diagram, the developers first code it. They test their code, and build and package their code, and then this is where the operations team come into play. And operations team will check whether the system is stable, and they will go test this by manually doing bureaucratic processes, going through checklists and documentations. So this process is a very slow process, and the deployment to production would take a really long time because of this. So how can we make this efficient? So we can make this efficient by doing the same thing. We can do code it, test it, building and packaging the software. And then when we deploy and operate, we can automate everything. So this would be the job of the SRE. The SRE will try to automate the process of evaluating the effects the changes will have. So no checklist for discussions, making releases fast and safe at the same time. So they would make both these processes, as you can see here, automated, which would save a bunch of time. To understand system reliability, how is that automation evaluation done? In order to know how this is done, we need to know what an SLA means. So an SLA is a service level agreement, which is basically a commitment between the service provider and the customer. So the SLA would define how reliable a system is or is going to be, how often is it up, or how often if it is down. So we need to mention all of these dependencies inside the SLA. So usually, for example, if you take in this diagram, we can see the availability. This availability is given as a percentage in the SLA. So what is the definition of SLA? So achieving 100% availability or reliability is very difficult and expensive. And if we think about it, very few services in this world need to have 100% SLA. So if you take an example over here, if we take your internet provider or maybe some mobile or laptop, we can't 100% say that these internet providers, for example, SLT or Dialog, are not 100% reliable. Sometimes they're up, sometimes there are signal uh, insufficiencies. So their services are not 100% up. So in this case, if the mobile or the internet provider is not 100% available, there is no need for our application to be 100% available as well. Hence, we don't need to have 100% availability or 100% SLA. So thus we can basically save a lot of expenses and effort as well. So SLA is usually defined by a number of nines. So usually it's always something like 99.9, 99.99, etc. So the closer you get to 100%, the more effort and expenses you will have to spend. So it is a very high effort to go towards this 99.999. So in a real world example, if we navigate to GCP or AWS, we can see something like this in their documentations. So this is a S3 SLA documentation table, and we can see they have defined the availabilities for each and every S3 bucket, S3 type of S3 bucket. So this is a small example of what an SLA can be and what a SLA can hold. So we can define SLAs. So we can define properties for the SLA such as accessibility, availability, response time, as well as the error rate. So to further understand this, let's do an example. So if we define the SLA as 99%, then we would have 1 lakh worth of requests per week. And because of this, if we calculate this, we would have 990,000 successful requests. So how is the SLA defined? Who are the people who define the SLA? So that would be the engineers, the developers, and the operation teams, as well as the business people inside the company. So the business people, they define the SLA on a higher level, whereas in the engineer's point of view, they define the SLA on a more technical level. So they consider integration into DevOps and SRE processes as well. So the SLA is usually based on industrial benchmarks, user feedback, as well as competition. So what is an error budget? So we would ask ourselves a question such as how long the service should be available, or how much downtime is allowed in our application. So an error budget is basically defined as the allowed downtime of a service is what's called an error budget. So teams can spend error budget on making unreliable changes without affecting any business or making customers unhappy by defining the error budget. So the SLA is also like a barometer where you can turn it up based on your needs or turn it down. So the closer you get to 100%, the more effort to guarantee the reliability of the service. So if we take another example, we can define the SLA as 99%. However, when we monitor and basically check for the SLA, we came to the conclusion that the SLA is actually 97% uptime. So we can see that we have defined the SLA as 99%, but the system uptime is actually 97%. So if the SLA is not within the given defined SLA, the SRE must work on making the systems more reliable. So until the systems recover, fewer changes are allowed for the developers to commit to the main repository. So more workforce would be given to the operations task than the software development team. So like when we meet the SLA, or when we go beyond the required SLA mentioned in the documentation, the developers and SRE can release more changes. So more workforce would be there in the development side than the operation side. So this is a simple way to regulate the release speed of the entire development process. So if we turn the SLA up, it slows down the release. And when we turn down the SLA, it speeds up the release. So what are the tasks and responsibilities of an SRE? So first is automation, which creates automated processes for operational aspects. So as I mentioned before, SRE teams are made up of software engineers who build and implement software to improve the reliability of the system or services. So they also check for the check if the service is within the required defined SLA as well. So then we have monitoring. So SRE engineers must configure monitoring and comprehensive logging as well. So basically the observability of the system performance. So another responsibility is alerting and also developing custom services for alerting. So alerting is for the observability for detecting issues in the system. So if an issue is alerted, the system must alert the correct person, and all the information should be there inside the issued alert. So basically, we don't want something like something is wrong in the cluster, or what we should have is service A in cluster B is throwing a 500 error. So the issue must mention which service, which cluster, and what problem is occurring. So it is important to also detect the issues before or early when they happen. Another responsibility is being on-call support, and the benefits of doing this on-call support is that the SREs can expect what issues can happen, and how the support team deals with the issues, and what improvements we can make in the future. So for example, do log messages contain enough messages or enough descriptive messages? So the main goal of SRE would be to have a small scope of incidents which occur inside the system, uh, and also short duration of outages, fewer people affected, and fewer services affected as well. So, the final responsibility would be the postmortem. So a postmortem is basically means after death. So after there is a problem which has occurred, there would be a thorough analysis of who fixed who did what caused the outage, and what systems were affected by the outage. And they need to stay blameless as well, which is a very important thing, and also document everything which they have done. So who is doing the SRE role? So there is a dedicated SRE role working full time on keeping the systems reliable. So they do so SLAs work on the same goal as both the operations as well as the developers as well. So they work in the same goal, doing all sorts of automation to help developers release uh, their changes fast and safely as well. So typically, SRE engineers must know software development as well, and not just the operation side. So let's go to the final topic, which is the differences between the SRE and DevOps teams. So as we can see in this diagram, there is a SRE person and a DevOps person who implements DevOps practices into the project. So the DevOps team builds pipelines, efficient pipelines. They basically what they do is they are more focused on the speed of delivery um, and what DevOps practices are more suited and needs to be done. And whereas in the SRE side, they focus more on the reliability and and they are the ones who actually implement the DevOps practices mentioned by the DevOps engineers. And they are like a complementary to DevOps. So basically, we can conclude that SRE and DevOps engineers are like two sides of the same coin. So their main goal in the end would be to release quality code fast. So in conclusion, we can I will further repeat. SRE engineers release quality code fast. So that's all for today, guys. So we will go through what we have learned today, why there was a need for SRE. We understood what SRE is, the definition, understanding system reliability, uh, about SLAs and error budget, the tasks and responsibilities, as well as the difference between an SRE engineer and a DevOps engineer as well. So that's it, guys. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have learned something new today. And that's been it. My name is Chandu Jesanaika, and have a nice day.